Hello, everyone. This is Matt Creamer, also known as Norin Rad. I was asked if I could come on the heavy metal special edition episode of the Game Wave podcast to talk a little bit about my 2010 chiptune death metal album Anomaly. Where to begin? Well, I guess cute chiptunes have never really appealed to me. For the longest time, I don't even recall, like in the chiptune community in the very beginning. I don't think there was any attempt to make a chiptune that wasn't cute sounding, and I'm not faulting them. I know firsthand that by default, when you're writing with square waves, you hear happy things. Like it takes a lot of effort to hear something, I guess, menacing or dark from a chiptune, or to see it in that way. And so when I was younger, there was two examples I can think of Nintendo music that actually scared me. Like I was scared while I was playing the game. Simon's Quest, the very last song in the game, or the last level, Dracula's Castle. It had its own song. It's basically just an arpeggio playing, and there's no enemies in the castle. It's just you walking through the castle alone, and putting those two ideas together. Like there's this song playing that's already like foreboding, but there's no enemies in the castle. That terrified me because it was artistic, like, well, what's gonna happen? Why is there no enemies in this castle? Like, what is awaiting? And so the buildup was awesome for that. And so if I was like, I think 7 or 8 at the time, like that really stuck with me, more than like the Mario Bros theme that didn't stick with me. And then later there was the last song again from the floating castle in Rygar. There was just this really simple chord progression that was really echoey. I think it was just the square waves playing it, and there was no percussion track. And that was like kind of this minimalistic, droning, ambient approach to, when you think about getting to the final level in a game and then you're just hit with this like really nullifying, ambient, droning sort of foreboding track. I remember I was playing it alone in my the basement of my parents' house, and I don't think anyone else was home at the time. And I remember I was genuinely scared, like playing this game, sitting alone with a controller in my hand. I was genuinely scared that something was going to happen, or that I was doing something wrong, or just a weird feeling. So Anomaly was basically me trying to recreate that in a chiptune. And even for me, like I listen to a lot of death metal, I listen to a ton of metal. It's not the natural I guess instinct for me to write music like that. If I hear a note, the next note that my brain comes up with is not always a death metal sort of inspired note. Usually the next note I hear would even be like a happy note or something that you would hear in, maybe not happy, but I understand why there were no menacing chiptunes up till this point, because I don't know, you have to be a certain type of musician to only hear these menacing notes coming in. And especially with a guitar, it's really easy to be like, I'm gonna write something freaking menacing. I'm gonna tune to like C standard, and like I know from experience too, if you tune to C standard, you're gonna write a death metal track. It's not even gonna be a problem. It's not even gonna be an issue. You will be writing death metal. You won't sound happy. It would be hard to write happy stuff in that tuning for me. So with chiptunes, you kind of have to come up with a protocol first to sort of follow in order to make sure you're adhering to the concept. So that's kind of what I did. I before anything, I sort of Anomaly didn't start out as like an album concept. Like, I'm gonna make an album. It started out as just like a concept. Like, I'm gonna see if this will work. Um, and the crux of that was finding out how to write a power chord in Nintendo limitations that sounded good. And like even when I first started out with chiptunes, that was the first thing I tried to do, was like write a power chord, and like I just transcribed it from guitar to chiptunes, and it didn't sound good. It didn't sound good at all. It sounded terrible. And that's when I realized, like, oh damn, there's more to interpreting your sounds than just like putting the notes from one song into your chiptune. And so I didn't actually understand how to make a proper power chord in chiptune format until I started this concept to try and write at least one death metal song. Um, and I eventually found like a workable solution. It wasn't the solution that I even ended up using on the album, but the first song I ever wrote was Naga Sotuva, which is the name of one of the bosses from Ninja Gaiden 2. And yeah, what I'd basically done for the power chord there was just write one note and then write like a lower note, like an octave lower, and that was kind of how I was like I justified it as like, well, it's like speed picking. It's not necessarily like a power chord. It's just like a guy torquing around on like the the low E string. Um, but I found a workable solution where I could translate sort of my ideas from death metal songs into chiptune format, and I think I based it heavily. If you want to go back and listen to it, heavily on the first track from this Chrysian album called "Ageless Venomous," and I taken their drum pattern concept where they have basically blast beats throughout the whole song, but they have a concept like it's not just blast beat from first note to the end. They had like a rhythmic pattern that they would always do. Where forgive me, I'm gonna actually try and do it with my mouth, but instead of like da 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 da, like the instead of like a rapid beat that was like from start to finish, they would always start with a like an accented note, pause, then go into the rapid fire. So it would be like da 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 da. And so that's what that is the exact thing I did with Naga Sutuva. And I also just did speed picking, which is a lot what Chrysian did too. It was basically just trying to write a Chrysian song in chiptune format. And I guess during the process of me doing that, I also realized like, F it, why don't I just try and like put the vocals in there too? Because like the Nintendo has that DPCM 1-bit audio chip. Like you can play back drum samples on it, and although the Nintendo couldn't have handled like a whole album's worth of vocals, it could have at least had a couple of lyrics. Like even Blades of Steel had a couple of voice samples. So originally what I did was like, well, I got to be authentic, like 100%. So I actually recorded the lyrics to Naga Satuva, and the lyrics were basically just a couple of words. And that was Gather Demons and Ashtar. I think that was it, like a couple of words. And I actually loaded them up in ModPlug, which was the tracker I used to write it. And I triggered them like I would any other note. And that was like the original prototype for this concept of death metal chiptunes. And I think I even had that on my MySpace page way back in the day. That was the first one I put up. And eventually I found a, well, I guess I should also mention the process of creating DPCM vocals. You have to use like command line tools, like applications that like ROM hacking community would use if they wanted to make their own game. So it's like this really archaic stuff. You have to record your vocals into 8-bit wave formats, then send them across this command line thing, and it would dump out like a DPCM file, and it would also dump out a decomp wave format that would be like a wave file that sounds like the DPCM file, because you can't actually use a DPCM file in like an audio excuse me, audio editing program or anything. So you have this decomp wave file, so you have to rename that, and then just toss that in to ModPlug, or toss that into Sony Vegas, which is what I eventually mixed the album on. So that was the process there. So yeah, I'd kind of fleshed out the concept of like, well, if you're gonna be tasked with creating death metal on a Nintendo, like this is kind of what the thought process you'd have to go through. So once I'd written those prototypes, or that prototype, I knew I was basically gonna have to write an entire album. But fortunately, I had a protocol, a concept that I'd proven would work. So the rest of the album became almost like a research process, because I knew I liked this one Chrysian song. I knew I liked the Chrysian sound, but there was other sounds I wanted to I wanted to have recreated in Nintendo format, like other sounds that I had not heard before, but I'd also wanted represented through this medium. So that consisted of 70s prog and like movie soundtrack stuff, basically just the music I liked. Like if I was to picture what Anomaly was if it was a video game, or if I was an actual Nintendo composer back in the day. My